just under 5 weeks to go now until the May local elections in England. And I think things are starting to heat up again. Look, last week I had the title, are the Conservatives back? Is the renewal on? And I sort of said in the video, I don't think that it is. And I think this week we've got further evidence that that's the case, that the Tories are not on a comeback trail, certainly not in time for May, which we're going to get into in this video. But look, a very good week for reform. And I think they're starting to build up momentum towards the local elections, the same as they did last year. Look, we've still got, like I say, just under 5 weeks to go until those elections happen, but I think they're starting to build up a little bit of a head of steam as we come into them, and we're going to see that in these results, starting off in Tottington Ward, Bury, up in the Greater Manchester area. Now, look, this is a ward that will be, a council that will be electing in May. In just under 5 weeks' time. A third of the council seats will be up for election. Labour have a majority here of around about 6 councillors, I believe. So Reform can't get a majority based off of the maths that they can only win a third of the seats, but they can deprive Labour of a majority if they win enough seats. So look, this is an instructive result for us going ahead into that election. Reform then come straight in and they gain it off the Conservatives. They get just under 40% of the vote. So look, a very good showing for Reform up here in Greater Manchester. We've seen in the last few weeks, for a long time actually, a lot of these by-elections being won on fairly low vote shares. This one's been won pretty convincingly by Reform with just under 40% of the vote. The Tories then were down 19 points. Now, this isn't necessarily a surprising figure to see. Like we have seen on a number of these Conservative defences them maintain their vote share. We've very, very rarely seen them improve their vote share by a significant amount, as in over 5%. Or 5 percentage points, and here they're down 19 points. This, like I say, is not all that uncommon to see. Last week they held a few, but they were down quite heavily on their vote shares then as well. So the same here. Look, not a good result for the Tories, down 19 points and just over a quarter of the votes for them. So a disappointing result for the Conservatives here. And of course, as always, a disappointing result for Labour. They're down to under 15% of the vote. Their vote share halving, pretty much, down 14 points to 15. The other one that's kind of impacted this is the Localists. Actually, they were down 16 or 17 points as well. So they played a much larger role last time when there was only 3 parties on the ballot, and they've just been squeezed out with Reform emerging this time. Also, a good showing from the Greens. Look, they were in 4th place. Behind Labour fairly comfortably and a long way behind the Tories and Reform. But look, they are just starting to grow their little... the edges of these banners are starting to grow slightly bigger for the Greens, slightly more sort of important vote shares that they're getting. I don't think it really impacted the result in this one, but we are just starting to see them nudge into more and more results. And that's where the momentum is on the left, isn't it? Reform very much on the right, gaining momentum over the Conservative Party, but also taking votes off of Labour. The Greens very much on the left and taking votes away from Labour as well, which is interesting. And what's even more interesting is going to be the next... before we move on to the next one, majority here for Reformers, just under 13 points, so fairly comfortable victory for them. Unfortunately, no turnout data. I've forgotten to look it up again before I started recording. So once again, Dr. Harris, if you wouldn't mind, please getting in the comments and leaving the turnout figures, that would be greatly appreciated. Once again, you're becoming the turnout man for us. We'll move on to Wigmore Ward, Luton, and this one's interesting. So again, it's another Reform gainer, this time off of the Liberal Democrats. So a much lower vote share to win on this time, about 7 points lower, really. So 33% of the vote for Reform, again, coming in from a standing start. Pretty impressive stuff once again. So winning on a third of the vote, pretty low vote share to be winning on, and they just squeezed the Liberal Democrats out. They got 30% of the votes, and that was down 24 points. So look, again, second time in a few weeks now we've seen a bit of a alarming result for the Liberal Democrats. They're not performing quite as well as they have done over the last 2 years, although the next result is good for them, and we'll get onto that shortly. But look, down 24 points is pretty hefty for the Lib Dems. And what's interesting here is, yes, Labour was standing, but they're actually only down 0.3, so there were no change. They were down by, they maintained their vote share. What's interesting is the Green Party increased by 10 points. Now, I reckon a lot of that Liberal Democrat vote has gone to the Green Party, and I think this is a bit of a blind spot for the Liberal Democrats. Let me know what you think in the comments below, but I think this is a blind spot. I think the Green voter, forgetting all the sectarian stuff, right, we know about the sort of the Islamic vote, the Muslim vote for the Greens, as we saw in Gorton and Denton. I think this is a separate issue. This is now the more the white middle class vote, essentially, and I think this is a blind spot for the Liberal Democrats. I think that the Liberal Democrats voter can very, very easily become a Green Party voter. I think it's the same sort of I don't know, mentality, philosophy maybe of these people. Now, I mean, in theory, the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party, particularly this iteration of the Green Party, are quite far apart in terms of what they would want to do. But I think perhaps Zach Polanski and his version of the Green Party and the momentum they have right now is just sort of catching the eye of Liberal Democrat voters and thinking, well, actually, these guys seem like they're quite serious. They might actually do something. Whereas the Liberal Democrats, frankly, I don't really see them doing anything. I think they're just a bit of a nothing party under Ed Davey. I don't really see them as being all that serious. They're just anti-Trump, anti-Farage, anti-Brexit, and then most of the publicity comes from Ed Davey doing silly things on, water slides or water skis or whatever it is. So I wonder if, the Liberal Democrat voter is starting to flirt with the Greens. So that'd be an interesting dynamic to see come into play maybe in May. Do the Liberal Democrats actually lose out to the Greens at all? Let me know what you think in the comments below, because up to this point, the Liberal Democrats have been doing very, very well in these by-elections. They've been clearly just almost as equally successful as the Reform, or at least second to them. But maybe the Greens are going to start nudging in on their sort of voter. What's also interesting, what kind of backs up this, is if I go to X, I just want to show you this post from user Taj Ali. And this is the kind of context I love from you guys. You put things like this in the comments all the time, these insights that I wasn't aware of. So he says Reform have won this by-election that we're looking at. He says it was a Lib Dem stronghold. It's one of the least diverse wards in the town and more affluent too. So that's what I mean. Middle class, white voters maybe just being tempted away from the Liberal Democrats to the Green Party because the Green Party is just a bit more forthright in sort of what they're pushing in their agenda. And I wonder, like I say, I just think they're kind of the same voter, so maybe a blind spot for the Liberal Democrats. So Reform here, much tighter victory than the one up in Bury. This was only 2.5 points, 43 votes in it. The turnout here was 26%. So again, a slightly lower turnout. To be interested to see what that Bury turnout was as well, because we said last week, didn't we, that Reform seemed to have reverted back to doing better in lower turnout by-elections, whereas there was a period of time last year where they had actually started doing pretty well in higher turnout by-elections. And that's all prefaced or in the parentheses of all the turnouts are very low, but, proportionally or not proportionally, comparatively, these are, 30+% turnouts for a local council by-election is pretty good. So that's why I call it high, when of course it isn't actually high. Right, moving on. And this is a good result for the Liberal Democrats. So I've just sat here slagging them off. But look, here they've done very well. Flemington, North Devon, and this doesn't surprise me too much. Look, I think we saw last year in the county council elections in Devon that the Tories are basically been wiped out in Devon, and it's become a battleground between Liberal Democrats and Reform, and the Liberal Democrats are slightly ahead of Reform in this county. So Lib Dems here with a very, very strong performance, look, up to 42 points, up 42 points to just under 50% of the votes. Very, very strong result for them. Looks like they've taken away a large chunk of this previous independent vote where they got 72% last time. Looks like a lot of that has gone to the Liberal Democrats, and so a very comfortable victory for them. Comfortably in second place is Reform, again with a standing start, straight into a third of the vote once again. And look, I said last week that I don't believe that some of the polls that we're seeing where the Reform are down on just over a quarter of the vote, or maybe even less, depending on what poll you look at. I think they're doing better than what the polls are saying, and I think the May election may well surprise a lot of people for how well Reform do on a vote share basis. Now, look, I could be wrong. I'm sticking my head above the parapet on that, but just what we're seeing in these by-elections, look, if Reform are averaging or a polling average of about 25-26%, for them to be getting a third of the vote in all of these elections or more, it just suggests that they're much higher than that in reality. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see. So a good result for them. The Tories were down 4 points here, so not too much change for them. And the Greens, again, like I say, not really impacting the result at all, but just nudging in with a little bit of a green tab on the end there, up to just under 9% of the vote. So look, I just did that brief thing there, didn't I? Talking about the Liberal Democrat voter maybe being tempted across to the Greens. This would seem to completely disprove that. So I may well be wrong. It's just a theory that I have. I mean, this result would suggest that the opposite, wouldn't it? But look, if you know more about the areas and all of these, as always, like I said with that X post, I very much appreciate all the comments and input you guys give. It really brings a lot more colour to the videos. So and as well, if you don't read the comments, do get into the comments because we get some really good contributions from you guys down there. Majority here for the Liberal Democrats, very comfortable, 17 points. And again, no turnout data, I'm afraid, in percentage terms. So if somebody wouldn't mind putting that down below, I'd be greatly appreciative. So a good win for the Lib Dems in North Devon. Lastly, we go to Hareholme and Waterfoot in Rossendale, and here's where the Greens come in. So, interesting point to make before we get into all of this is that only one, the first one is Bury was the only one where Labour or the Conservatives come in the top two. That's something we're seeing more and more often now. Both of the main two parties just not featuring in the top two. The two-party system, as we've said a few times, is evolving. It's squeezing out those two established parties in favour of Reform, Greens and Liberal Democrats, isn't it? So the Greens here have won, beating Labour. They came in and improved by 9 points. So look, a healthy improvement, but not sort of stratospheric. It's not a huge gain for them, but good enough to win for them, just to 38% of the vote. So decent sort of vote share to win on. It's getting up towards that 40% mark, but not quite. Reform very close behind, and from a standing start for them, so slightly more impressive, to 34.5% of the vote. I'd be interested to know if you're from Lancashire area or up that part of the country, do you think this is one that got away from Reform? Do you think this is a disappointment? I suppose similar in a way to Gorton and Denton. I think it's a bit different with that one, but I wonder, is this one that Reform might be a little bit disappointed they haven't won? I would have thought the Reform would have had a good chance here. I can't remember if I said last week if they would win it or not, but they would have been my guess. I probably did mention the Greens just because it was Labour defending, so it was always a chance in the current climate that we're in. But look, I think a good showing from Reform to come from a standing start up to 35-ish% of the vote. That's what we see from them quite often, obviously. And as I just said, in terms of the polling averages, I'm sure they're above what the polls are putting them at the moment. So yeah, what do you think? Do you think this is one that got away from Reform? Close, but not close enough. Labour then were down, again, 28 points. Really, really bad result for them. I know I say it every week, but I don't think much of the mainstream commentariat is prepared for what's going to happen to Labour on May the 7th. They are going to have huge vote share declines, massive vote swings away from them. They're going to lose councils left, right and centre. Look, some predictions have had them losing over 2,000 councillors. That may well happen. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Very, very bad. And also not very good for the Conservatives here either, down 17 points to under 10% of the vote. Look, both two main parties a long, long way behind Reform and the Greens here. It's becoming an established narrative now. These two parties are very much withering on the vine, dying in front of our eyes, aren't they? It's and again, the Tories in May are going to be really, really hurt, even more so than it was going to be because of the county council elections that were going to be cancelled again. Thank goodness they aren't. They're going ahead, and that's going to expose the Conservatives to more losses than they were otherwise going to be expecting. Look at Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, East and West Sussex, Surrey. It's going to be a punishing night for the Conservatives in that regard as well. So look, we're living through very, very interesting times in terms of politics, in terms of how the sands are very much shifting, and I really have enjoyed doing these videos for the last year and a half. It really is quite fun going through all this with you guys. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please do hit the subscribe button now and join this community. We'll be doing a live stream, inaugural live streams on the 7th of May overnight for a little bit, and on the 8th of May when most of the votes come in as well. So do make sure you come in and join us, subscribe so you don't miss it and all that jazz. Rossendale then, the Greens with a majority of just 3 points. So like I say, a very, very slender lead over Reform. Only 54 votes in this one, so a similar sort of margin to Reform up in Luton. And turnout here was 31%, so around about the sort of average that we have been seeing in recent times. So that was this week. Very, very good week for Reform, I think, even in the ones where they didn't win. Like I say, massively over getting over their national polling average. So, like I say, I think good signs for reform. I think they are building up ahead of steam and momentum. As I said, the Greens sort of nudging in on all of these elections as well. I know weren't in the hunt for a lot of them, but they're just starting to gain momentum as well. Liberal Democrats, maybe they've just got to look over their shoulder. And look, it'll be interesting to see what happens on the 7th of May in terms of Lib Dems and the Greens there, as I said. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll now go over to have a look at next week. So again, it's another week with just the one by-election, Cliftonville ward in Kent, and it is a Reform defence. So this will be an interesting one to see, because Kent has had a lot of press since May last year when Reform took majority control of this council. Now, I don't live in Kent, but there's been a lot of stories about it being chaotic, not being very well run. They have had councillors leaving, being sacked. Similar, I think, down in Cornwall as well. So, look, it's not been a smooth ride for Reform in Kent in terms of just, I suppose, internal party politics and what have you. And a lot of the parties have loved to show Kent as an example of why Reform can't govern a council. If you live in Kent, I'd love to know what you think. But from what I've seen and read, I think Kent has had an awful lot of publicity for a county council, more than you sort of maybe would see for a lot of other places. And I think that's because Reform won it so convincingly. I think it's been held to a slightly higher standard. I don't know, maybe I'm being unfair, but it doesn't seem... It seems a little bit unbalanced, what the news stories that come out of Kent. But it will be interesting to see how this vote goes. So Reform got 40% of the vote last time. Let's see what happens to that vote share. And a lot of the vote places where they've been defending in the last year, they've held some and lost others. Generally speaking, they tend to lose between 5 and 10 points. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Also, Labour came second with 22 points, and Conservatives had 19% of the vote. So look, they're quite far ahead. So they've got a decent margin to defend. A lot of the ones where they've lost after a lot of the defences they've lost have been much closer margins than this. So I reckon Reform may well hold on to this one, but let me know what you think in the comments below. It's the same spread of party standing as it was last time. Greens, Labour, Liberal Democrats, and Independent, the Conservatives, and of course Reform. So yeah, that's all we've got next week. Just one in Kent. So let me know what you think will happen over there. And I think next week what we'll do then, because we only have this result to look at, we'll maybe do a bit of a preview video looking ahead to May. I know I've been saying for the last few weeks I'm going to do some more May election preview videos. Maybe we'll just tag that on to the end of next week and have a look at what's coming up, because of course it'll be just under 4 weeks by the time we do next Friday's video. So I will see you all then. If you've got this far in the video and you haven't already subscribed, thank you very much for sticking with it. Please do hit subscribe now and the notification bell so you don't miss anything in the future. If you could leave a like, it greatly helps the channel. I'll be greatly appreciative of that. And as I keep saying, please do get involved in the comments with your thoughts and opinions, your takes and all that jazz. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you next week.